Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are looking at something that feels a bit like an unstoppable object meeting an immovable force. Or maybe a better way to put it.
An unsinkable ship.
An unsinkable ship sailing straight through a hurricane of controversy. Yeah,
that is a very vivid image to start with. But, given what we're talking about today, I'd say it's entirely appropriate. It really captures the sheer scale of it all.
It really fits because we are talking about the wizarding world. Harry Potter. It is just a beast of a topic. And specifically, we're unpacking a really fascinating and I think very granular discussion from the YouTube channel Clownfish TV.
With neon and geeky sparkles, right?
Exactly. They did a deep dive of their own into, well, the current state of the franchise, the upcoming HBO reboot, and of course, the endless swirling storm around J.K. Rowling.
Right. And what makes their take so interesting, what we really want to dig into, is this massive disconnect they identify. It's like a schism in reality.
Yeah, disconnect. How so?
Well, on one side, you have this very loud, very passionate cultural narrative. You see it mostly online in certain media outlets that is actively trying to dismantle the brand because of Rowling's stance on genders.
And on the other side.
Yeah. You just have the economic reality, the numbers, the money.
Exactly. And that gap, that disconnect, that's our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We want to understand how brand that is, you could say at the center of the biggest culture war of the decade.
How is it not just survive?
It seems to be growing.
It's growing. It just defies all the usual logic of cancel culture.
It's a paradox. That's what the Clownfish TV hosts call it. They argue that the very attempts to destroy the brand have actually, in a strange way, made it stronger.
It's a feedback loop.
It's a classic case of unintended consequences. A feedback loop of outrage and profit. It's wild.
So let's set the scene properly for you. The source video we're analyzing was triggered by a couple of things happening all at once. It wasn't just a random commentary.
There was a convergence. First, you have the legendary actor John Lithgow joining the cast of the new HBO series, and crucially, refusing to back down, despite some pretty immense pressure.
And we'll get into the details of that. It's a fascinating story in itself.
And second, there was a really scathing article from a site called MovieWeb that the hosts just dissect pretty ruthless.
So it creates this incredible tension. You've got legacy media and activist voices on one side saying the brand is toxic, it's dangerous, it's dying. I mean, they're literally writing the obituary.
And then on the other side, you have the hard data and the actors saying something completely different. So yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, where do we start? The money.
I think we have to start with the money. Let's unpack this economics of outrage, because if you spend any time at all on social media, you'd think Harry Potter is over. You'd think the books are being burned and the theme parks are ghost towns.
Right. But the source material, Clownfish TV, they just paint a completely different picture.
It really starts with what they call the failed boycott hypothesis. And they use a very specific, very recent case study to prove this point.
Hogwarts Legacy, the video.
Oh, right. I remember this vividly. I mean, you couldn't escape it. It was everywhere.
It absolutely was. And the source reminds us that there was this massive, organized, very vocal effort to boycott the game.
The logic was simple, right? Don't buy the game.
Exactly. The logic from an activist perspective was pretty sound on paper. If you buy this game, you are putting money directly into J.K. Rowling's pocket. Therefore, you are financially supporting her views on women's rights and trans issues, which critics find deeply harmful. The goal was to deny her revenue.
Cut off the oxygen.
Cut off the oxygen. Simple cause and effect.
And according to Clownfish TV, that plan, it didn't just fail.
Oh, it backfired. I mean, spectacular.
They argue it became a boycott. Break that down for us. What is a boycott?
Well, it's this phenomenon where instead of people staying away from the product, the controversy itself galvanizes a huge portion of the public to buy it specifically to spite the...
So it's a protest purchase.
It's a protest purchase. Or, in a less malicious sense, the constant noise, the constant shouting about it simply reminded millions of people how much they loved that world. The source argues the activists made Harry Potter, and I'm quoting here, bigger than it's been in a long time just by yelling about it.
They put it right back in the center of the cultural conversation.
Yeah, and that is the central irony they keep coming back to.
Neon, one of the hosts, he points out that the Fantastic Beasts movies, the spin-off, they were actually seeing declining returns. They were trending down.
The franchise was naturally winding down. It was getting a bit tired.
Right. To use their metaphor, it was pulling into station 9 3/4 for a nice long rest. It's kind of going dormant.
And then the boycott happened.
Boom. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is talking about Wizards.
And the source suggests that Warner Bros. Was watching this very, very closely. They were looking at the Hogwarts Legacy sales numbers, which were massive, by the way. They broke all sorts of records. And they had this collective light bulb.
The executives realized, wait a minute, the core Harry Potter brand is still incredibly, unbelievably lucrative.
Neon posits a direct causation there. He believes the backlash to the game and the success of the game, despite the backlash, actually accelerated the greenlighting of the HBO reboot.
It wasn't a coincidence.
Not at all. It proved to the people on the boardroom that the fan base was still active, still willing to spend a lot of money, and this is the crucial part, that the online rage did not translate to consumer apathy.
Not in the slightest. And that's the corporate reaction. Corporations, at the end of the day, they don't really care about Twitter. They care about the bottom.
If the line goes up, the project gets that simple.
And speaking of the bottom line, the numbers that are cited in the source material they are just daggers.
They are legitimately difficult to wrap your head around. The hosts break down what they call the financial fortress that protects Rowling and the brand.
Okay, let's hear them.
They mentioned she makes an estimated $60 to $80 million a year.
60 to 80 million.
Per year, just in book royalties.
Hold on. That's just for the books. Books that were written, 25 years ago?
Yes, that is passive income on a galactic scale. And that's the absolute basement floor of her earnings.
That's the starting point.
That's where you begin. Then you add in the studio tours in London, Tokyo. That's a billion-dollar revenue stream on its own.
A billion. With a B for a tour.
With a B for a tour. Then you look at sales of toys, games, apparel, wands, robes, all of it.
The merchandise.
The merch is estimated at around $7 billion in sales.
$7 billion. That's the GDP of a small nation.
It really is. And that's not even touching the single biggest cash cow of them all.
The theme parks.
The theme parks. The source highlights the ongoing massive revenue from Universal Studios. You've got the Wizarding World in Florida, in Hollywood, in Japan, and they mention the new Epic Universe park that's opening.
And it has another Harry Potter land in it.
Of course it does. So when people say cancel J.K. Rowling, what they're really trying to do is cancel a multi-billion-dollar, deeply integrated, global conglomerate ecosystem.
It's not one person anymore. It's an institution.
Exactly. And this leads to their too big to cancel theory. Neon makes a point that I think is really important for you, the listener, to grasp just about the complexity of the modern economy.
What's that?
He says, even if you personally boycott the book, if you decide, I'm never buying a Harry Potter book again, if you then buy a ticket to Universal Studios to go see Super Nintendo World.
Which looks amazing, by the way.
It does. But if you go there just to ride a roller coaster, you are still feeding into the ecosystem that pays J.K. Rowling.
It's unavoidable. It's baked into the very infrastructure of modern entertainment.
Totally unavoidable. And so the hosts argue that these narratives you see online saying no one cares anymore or the brand is worthless now, they're just factually incorrect. The money proves otherwise. It is a multi-billion-dollar machine that is, for the most part, completely insulated from social media trends.
It really puts the culture war aspect into perspective, doesn't it? It feels like throwing pebbles at a tank.
Or yelling at a hurricane, to borrow your metaphor from the top of the show. The storm rages on, but the ship is an aircraft carrier. It barely even notices.
So the money is safe. The brand is, for all intents and purposes, financially invincible. But that doesn't mean the new HBO show is going to be smooth sailing.
No, not at all.
The source spends a lot of time discussing the creative challenges of this reboot, and this is where I think the conversation gets really, really nuanced.
This is where the discussion shifts from, raw economics to logistics, and the central tension is promises versus practicality.
Right. So the main marketing pitch for this new HBO series, which is an 8-year commitment, by the way, that's huge.
A decade of their lives, basically.
A full decade. The promise is that it's going to be a faithful, book-accurate adaptation, 1 season per book. We're finally going to get to see everything the movie's cut out. Peas the Poltergeist, SPEW, the Death Day Party, all of it.
That is the promise.
Yeah.
That's the hook. That's how you get the millennials who grew up with the books back on board.
Yeah.
You promise them the pure, uncut version.
But the hosts at Clownfish TD are, they're extremely skeptical. They call it a potential bait and switch.
A big one.
Why? Why can't they just film the book? What's stopping?
The cultural climate. The world we live in today is profoundly different from the late 90s and early 2000s when those books were written and became popular.
So things that were fine then are not fine now.
Exactly. The hosts argue that there are things in the text, visuals, specific scenes, character descriptions that you simply cannot film one-to-one today without causing a massive, massive uproar.
They gave a specific example of that. Yeah, it made me wince a little bit when I thought about it visually. They mentioned a scene from the Marauders era, a flashback, where a character is hung from a tree.
Yes, in the books, it's a scene of bullying. James Potter uses a spell to levitate Snape and hangs him upside down by his ankle in front of...
It's meant to show James was kind of a jerk as a teenager.
It is. But the source argues that visually, on screen, in the 2020s, putting a scene where A character is literally hung from a tree that has visual parallels and historical connotations that a modern audience would find deeply disturbing and unacceptable.
It's going to look really, really bad. I think that's a direct quote they used. And I get that. When you read it in a book, your mind can make it almost cartoony. But a camera is literal.
The camera doesn't lie. Seeing a teenager strung up in a tree, that hits very different now.
It really does. And this whole issue leads directly into the casting controversy. Now, this is a delicate topic, but the source dives right in.
Yeah, they don't shy away from it. There have been rumors swirling for a while about the casting of key characters, but specifically Severus.
The rumor being that they might cast a black actor in the role.
Right. Now, before we go any further with this, it's really important to stress the specific distinction the hosts make.
It's a crucial point of nuance.
It is. They are not saying a black actor can't play. They aren't making a value judgment on any actor's ability or right to play the part. Their argument is about the marketing.
It's about the promise.
It's entirely about the promise of being book accurate. If you change the physical description of a character, and Severus Snape is described very, very specifically in the books as pale, sallow-skinned, with greasy black hair. If you change that fundamental description,
you automatically negate the claim that you are making a faithful one-to-one adaptation.
You've just broken your #1 marketing promise right out of the gate. That's their point. It's not a faithful adaptation anymore. It's a reimagining. And that's fine, but you can't sell it as the former.
And that, they argue, leads to the trap of expectation.
The ultimate trap.
It's a lose-lose scenario, isn't it? When you lay it out like that, I can really see the bind the showrunners are in.
It certainly seems that way from the source's perspective. Think about it. If HBO stays 100% faithful to the text, including the house elf slavery, awkward bullying scenes, the names that haven't aged well, they risk alienating the new, modern audience they're trying to capture.
They'll be called outdated, problematic, offensive.
For sure. But if they update the casting to be more diverse, if they sanitize the bullying, if they remove some of those rough edges, suit modern sensibilities,
they alienate the core fan base, the very people who were sold on the promise of faith.
Exactly. The core fans will immediately cry foul and say, this isn't what you promised us the book. Meanwhile, the new audience might still find other critics. It's almost impossible to please everyone.
It's like trying to walk a tightrope over a canyon, but both sides of the canyon are on fire.
That's a put it. It's an incredibly narrow nav. And the source suggests that Warner Bros. know they can't actually deliver a 100% faithful adaptation in 2025.
But they have to say they will.
They have to say they will to get the initial buy-in from the hardcore fans. It's a marketing strategy that could very easily backfire on them once the show actually airs.
And that skepticism is just fueling so much of the pre-release tension online. Fans are already dissecting every single rumor, just waiting to see if that promise is kept.
It's a powder.
Speaking of tension, let's talk about the human element, because all this corporate strategy and online shouting, it lands on real people. And specifically, the source focuses on the actor John Lithgow.
John Lithgow. I mean, a titan of the industry, a living legend. And he has joined the cast to play Albus Dumbledore.
Which is huge news. That's major cast. But the context here is that Lithgow is 80 years old.
He is. And he openly acknowledges that this is likely going to be his last major role. He calls it a winding down role, which is interesting because
it's an 8-year commitment.
It's an 8-year commitment. That's a massive undertaking for an octogenarian. It's not exactly a quiet retirement gig.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And because he's stepping into this world, he's stepping right into the firing line. The source discusses an interview Lithgow gave where he defends his decision to take the role. And his defense is, well, it's a very traditional, old school acting philosophy.
It is. Lithgow very explicitly separates the art from the artist. He looks at the Harry Potter stories themselves, and he doesn't see politics. He sees universal themes.
He describes the story as being fundamentally about acceptance, good versus evil, and kindness versus cruel basics.
The fundamentals of storytelling. And he actually uses the word ironic. He finds it ironic and inexplicable that Rowling holds the views she does on biological sex and women's spaces.
Because he sees no trace of that in the actual story.
Right. He says he found no trace of transphobic sensitivity in the actual story of Harry Potter. He's essentially saying, I judge the script, not the tweet. He's looking at the text that's in front of him, the character he's being asked to play.
Exactly. But the pressure on him was real. And this is where the story gets very personal. The source mentions that Lithgow received a text message from a very close friend.
A canary in the coal called it.
Yes. And this friend was a mother of a trans child. And she warned him against taking the role. She told him what the backlash would be, what it would mean to that.
Wow. Can you just imagine that conflict? This isn't just some random troll on the internet. This is a close friend appealing to him on a deeply really personal, emotional level.
And Lithgow admits it. He says he felt uncomfortable and unhappy about the pressure to walk away. Clearly weighed on.
But he didn't quit.
He did not walk away. And the source interprets this as a really significant victory for artistic independence. It's an actor, specifically an actor, with absolutely nothing left to prove in his career, saying, I can do what I want.
I'm John Lithgow. I can do whatever the bleep I want.
Yeah.
I think that was the sentiment that Neon from Clownfish expressed. And frankly, at 80 years old, with his resume, he's probably one of the few people in Hollywood who can actually say that and mean it.
Roughly, yes. And Lithgow also counters the human cost argument that's often leveled at people who work on this franchise.
What's that argument?
Well, critics argue that by working on the show, he is validating Rowling's platform and that this has a real human cost for the trans community.
And what's his counter?
He argues there is another human element to consider: the hundreds of writers, actors, set designers, electricians, and crew members working on the show.
He makes the point that Rowling isn't running the set. She's not there day-to-day directing scenes. He wants to work with those people, the creative team on the ground. He refuses to let the controversy around one woman negate the work and the livelihood of thousands of other craftspeople.
It's a very pragmatic stance, isn't it? It prioritizes the immediate workplace, the tangible project, over the more abstract cultural battle.
It does. But it stands in such stark contrast to the dominant media narrative, which brings us perfectly to the next section of our deep dive, the shifting media narrative.
Oh boy, this section. The source takes a long, hard look at that article from MovieWeb. You said it before. They do not hold back. This is where the clownfish element of Clownfish TV really comes out.
They really don't. The hosts just dissect this article, which was written by a trans contributor whose beat is LGBTQ plus content.
Yeah.
And right out of the gate, Neon just mocks the writing style.
He asks if it was written by
ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
That got a genuine laugh out of me. It's such a specific nerdy roast. But their point was that it wasn't AI. It was just a very specific type of activist writing that hits certain buzzwords and follows a predictable formula.
And the core argument the source makes here, and this is critical to understanding their whole perspective, is about moving the goalpost.
Okay, explain that. What do they mean by moving the goalposts in this context?
Well, for a long time, the argument from many critics was based on death of the author. You know, the classic idea that you can and should separate the art from the...
We love Harry, we just hate JK. That was the mantra for a while.
It was. But the source argues that because Hogwarts Legacy made $1 billion, that strategy proved completely ineffective. The brand didn't die, so the tactics had to shift.
So now, instead of separate the art from the artist, the new argument is the art is the artist.
That's it exactly. The source claims that critics are now combing through the original textbooks that, for 20 years, were celebrated as progressive symbols of tolerance and love to find inherent big. They are trying to prove that the story itself is racist, anti-Semitic, and phobic in order to justify canceling the entire property from the ground up.
And the MovieWeb article they analyzed lists some specific allegations that the Clownfish TV hosts just go to town on. Let's go through them, because these are pretty heavy accusations. First up, the Goblin.
Right. The article claims the goblins who run Gringotts Bank are an anti-Semitic trope. The long-nosed bankers who are obsessed with gold.
It's a long-standing criticism, to be fair.
It is, but the source's reaction is to point out a historical irony. They note that accusations of anti-Semitism regarding these kinds of banking tropes often used to come from the far right, but now they see it coming from the far left.
It's the horseshoe theory in action.
Perhaps. They just find it ironic. Okay, what's next on the list from the article?
Cho Chang. The name has always been a sticking point in these discussions.
The article frames the name Cho Chang as a result of racist ignorance. A lazy, stereotypical name that's just two surnames from two different Asian cultures mashed together.
And Dumbledore. This one feels like a really big pivot in the discourse.
This is the one that really got the hosts laughing. The article argues that Rowling retconned Dumbledore's sexuality, that he was never explicitly gay in the text, and she just added that detail later to score points or for clout.
And Neon and Geeky Sparkles were basically like, did you even read the book?
Pretty much. They immediately cite his satin purple robe, and they joke, no straight man is going to wear that. But their more serious point is that Dumbledore was heavily coded as gay throughout the entire, even if it wasn't explicitly stated.
So they're arguing that claiming he wasn't coded gay is actually ignoring the nuance of the text itself.
Right. It's a form of erasure from their point of view. So the source sees this article not as legitimate literary criticism, but as a desperate attempt to find new reasons to hate something because the old reasons didn't stop buying.
It's retroactively pathologizing the text.
That's a good way to put it. And they take particular issue with the article's claim that Rowling are dangerous.
The safety. That her words are tantamount to physical violence.
The hosts argue that opinions, even opinions you find deeply offensive about biology and gender, are not violent. They draw a very sharp line. And they contrast Rowling's tweets with the actual documented harassment faced by actors and developers who part in the franchise.
So they're saying nothing she is saying is getting anybody physically hurt, but the backlash to her is hurting people.
That is their argument, which leads us perfectly into the cycle of harassment, because this isn't just about billionaires and movie stars and media narrative. There is real collateral damage. Real people are getting caught in the gears of this machine.
And the hosts, they seem genuinely concerned for the child actors who are going to be cast in this new HBO series. I mean, we're talking about 10 or 11-year-old kids.
They predict they're going to be
doxxed, harassed, bullied online relentlessly, regardless of the show's quality or their performance. Neon says, and this is a chilling quote, they're going to find out where the kids live and make their lives a living hell.
He believes activists will target these children as a way to send a message to the student, to punish them for participating.
That is a terrifying prediction, and it's not unfounded, is it? They talk about what happened to people who were just peripherally associated with Hogwarts legacy.
They do. There was a voice actor, not a big star, just a working actor, who recorded his lines for the game years before it came out.
No, it's before.
Years. So he did the work long before Rowling made her most controversial tweets. Yet when the game finally came out, fans tried to retroactively cancel him for it.
It's like they wanted him to have a time machine. You should have known 2 years ago what she was going to tweet today. It's an absolutely impossible, absurd standard to hold someone to.
It is. And then there's the case of Michelle Gomez. She's well known for playing Missy on Doctor Who. She is an outspoken, very public LGBTQ+ activist. She has done the work. She's an ally.
And she did some voice work for a Harry Potter audio play.
Yeah, as Dolores Umbridge, of all characters, ironically. And she faced intense cancellation attempts for it.
Despite her record as an activist, despite being a known ally.
And the source uses this specific example to argue that these purity tests are just eating their own. It doesn't matter if you're an ally. If you touch the forbidden brand, you become the enemy. It's a zero-tolerance policy that ends up alienating your own friends and supporters.
It's become a civil war within the industry, too. The source notes a really interesting split among the Harry Potter alumni, the original cast members. It's not a united front at all.
Not even close. It is a very clear divide. On one side, you have what the source calls the critic, primarily the younger stars like Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson. The source implies that they wanted to overwrite their associate character to distance themselves from Rowling as much as possible.
Even though she gave them their careers.
Even though they owe their entire careers to her. They vehemently disagree with her views and have made that very public.
And on the other side, who's there?
You have the defenders, or at the very least, the new Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy, publicly thanked Rowling at an event. Evanna Lynch, Luna Lovegood, has advocated against canceling her, saying we should listen with more compassion. And Warwick Davis is actually returning for the HBO show.
So even the people who were there from day one, who lived this for a decade, can't agree on how to handle this situation. It just shows you how deeply messy and personal this has all become.
It's incredibly complicated. But ultimately, Clownfish TV comes back to one major marketing theory that they believe explains everything.
The Streisand effect.
The Streisand effect. The classic idea that by trying to suppress or destroy something, inadvertently make it more famous and more desirable.
So they argue that all these angry articles, like the one they dissected from Movie Web, are basically just free advertising for the franchise.
That's exactly it. Neon's phrase is rinse and repeat. Every time there is a shit fit, his words about the franchise online, the other side, the people who are tired of the discourse, they go out and buy more.
It keeps Rowling at top of mind awareness. If nobody is talking about her, she's just another wealthy author. If everyone is screaming about her every single day, she becomes a symbol.
She becomes a cause. And the source argues that if critics just stop talking about her, she and the brand might actually fade away. But by writing about her every day, they just remind the anti-woke crowd to go buy a wand to own the lid.
It turns the simple act of buying a video game into a political statement.
It's marketing via out. And Warner Bros. Is just sitting back, reaping the rewards. They don't have to spend millions on an ad campaign when the internet is doing it for them for free.
So, okay, let's bring this all together. What is the synthesis here? What's the bottom line from the Clownfish TV deep dive?
Their stance is crystal clear. The attempt to destroy the Harry Potter brand has not just failed financially, it has culturally backfired. It has breathed new life into a franchise that was, by all accounts, naturally declining. It gave it a second wind.
It's the central irony of the whole situation. The more that critics demand total disavowal and cancellation, the more the general public and the corporation behind it all seems to double down.
It raises a really profound question, I think, about sustainability of these moral purity tests in our media consumption. Can you really force the general public to care about the ethics there when the product itself is that beloved and that ingrained?
That's the big takeaway for me from all that. If a piece of intellectual property is truly Too big to fail? Does the cultural conversation happening on Twitter and in ThinkPiece actually matter to the bottom line? Or is it all just sound and fury signifying nothing?
Or is it, as we kind of hinted at in the beginning, just noise? Just noise, filling the void between product. The data, at least according to this source, suggests the latter. The silent majority want to go back.
It's a very sobering thought for online activists, and I imagine a very comforting one for corporate executives.
Indeed, it suggests that, in this case, economic inertia trumps online activism.
Well, that's where we're going to leave it for this deep dive. We've looked at the money, the creative tightrope, the actors, the media articles, and the outreach. We've covered a lot of ground.
And the paradox remains completely unsolved.
Now, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. We've talked a lot about the past, the books, the old movies, and the immediate future with this HBO reboot. But think about if the boycott phenomenon was driven by spite and the criticism is driven by moral outrage, what happens when the anger on both sides starts to fade?
That is the ultimate question. What happens when it just gets...
Can a franchise truly survive long-term on a foundation of nostalgia and spite alone? Or does it eventually need to stand on its own artistic merit again? If the new HBO show is just kind of boring, will anyone still care about the controversy in Season 5?
Only time will tell. If the quality of the product ever drops, that financial shield might finally start to crack.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.